Hi, Lester here, and today I've got with me Will Marshall from Marshall Quantity Surveying. Will specialises in handling builder quantity surveying, and along with him is Eddie Cooney from Luxor Homes, and Eddie's got a vast experience in the building industry. And between the three of us, we're going to try and make sense of an article that came out in the Herald this week and just comment on it. And really, it's about this Australian modular apartment firm that was building housing for Kaingaora, or multi-dwelling housing. And I think you guys have read that article, have you?
Yep.
Look, I tell you, I'm going to start it and probably focus on you initially, Will. What really struck me is this comment here. This is a sad tale, prefabricated timber components that were flat packed from Australia and was supposed to be high quality and cost around $4,000 a square metre. Instead, the cost was around $8,000 a square metre. So, yeah, that seems pretty cheap for housing. Am I right, Will? What's your comment?
Well, I think if you couldn't build it for 8,000 a square metre, you'd be definitely in trouble for social housing and the cost of it. But I think, what's a square metre worth and what's included in that square metre, it doesn't seem that it would be efficient if they're the numbers that they're coming up with.
Yeah, well, 4,000 even. I mean, that you think about that in the overall scheme of things. I'm focusing on an image now of one of those corner sites that they're doing. And this is multi-level and it's multi-unit. So it should be even cheaper than traditional housing, shouldn't it? Not like, hey, we think it's 4,000 2 years ago and it's coming in at $8,000. I mean, what would you call an $8,000 a square metre build now, Will? What end of the market are we talking?
Oh, I'd be talking an executive home, sort of a lower end executive home, maybe 300 to 400 square meters, possibly on the side of a hill.
Yeah.
With
So
pretty high end finishes. Yeah.
Bit of a Wellington build, something like that.
Mm. Yeah.
Eddie, what could I get off you for 8,000 square meter, mate?
Yeah, that's in our market. So that's your high end architectural luxury home. Yeah. Lots of concrete detailed finishes and that sort of thing. So definitely not social housing at 8,000 a square metre.
No, kind of crazy. Yeah. So the economics of building, when you build like this, what are the economics supposed to be like, Ed?
Well, you're supposed to, I guess, get some economies of scale because especially if it's modular. So if you're looking at similar design for all of them, similar fixtures, and it'll all be, modest fixtures and fittings, similar layout, you'd have to be, maximizing your sheet sizes for your jib board, your flooring, that sort of thing. All your doors are going to be similar sort of size. So you should be able to get some economies of scale when you're doing social housing and doing some, especially modular. So at 4,000 squares, like I said before, you should be able to build any sort of bog standard stick framed home. But there is a fallacy that going up is going to save money.
Yeah, so I think 3-level, I mean, typically, obviously, when you start getting into multi-level, particularly with separate tenancies, there are increased costs around the fire rating and the acoustics, which do add cost. Obviously, when you do start going even higher, you're typically getting a lift, and the structural components start to stack up, but that looks like a pretty standard 3-level timber framed, supposedly modular, which should sort of mean that it goes up a lot quicker on site. Not quite sure what the foundations look like. I would assume that they'd have to be concrete.
I think there's an image further down. They just look like pod slabs, really.
Yeah, similar to like a rib raft.
Yeah, they're not.
I'd imagine.
They don't look awfully complex, very load bearing. They look reasonable sites.
Yeah, but then there could have been piles put down underneath it.
But those things would be outside your square metre rate, like you said before. Depends on what goes into that square metre rate. You can't have varying site conditions added into your square metre rate.
One of the other articles, they had an image of the factory, actually in Melbourne, and it showed it was big flatbed, typical framing type setup, and yeah, it just looked like stick framing, cassette I don't know if you've seen cassettes before. Some of the firms do those. So essentially, they come in as pre-constructed walls and just put them straight up. Yeah, and you were commenting earlier, Ed, about, really at the end of the day, this is still stick frame construction. Whether you do it on site or do it in a factory, it's still the same thing.
Yeah, if we're doing the same thing we've been doing for the last 7 years, we're going to get the same results.
Yeah.
So if we're just stick framing in a factory and pulling it out to site, there's nothing really new about that. And there's not really, I don't think there's really huge savings in it. And I don't think we've actually seen it anywhere. We've seen multiple modular home companies fail.
Yeah.
So I just, I don't see the benefit in it. And the other issues you've got too is, until, I don't even know if we have it now, but we had a big push from central government saying that this is, what we need to do. So let's get on with this. And then you had your local governments going, okay, well, how do we manage it?
Well, isn't that one of the issues? I've noticed this every time the government's trying to build efficiency into the industry. Who do they talk to? They talk to the big players, the Fletchers, and they come up with the same sort of thing. Like, they look at this as an exercise and let's build it in a factory and assemble it on site like it's a commercial build. But it just seems to work. They're not coming to the Eddies of the world and saying, hey, Eddie, what's a good way to do this? Can we do more of it in the factory and bring it out? They're trying to apply, I think, non-building standard methods, or trying to bring factory methods into an industry that just can't accommodate it.
Yeah, we're not geared for it. I mean, it's like I said, there's the local governments. Well, how do we manage it? When do we inspect it? How do we sign it off? And if there's a problem, who do we call?
Yeah.
Because if the components are made in China, then they're shipped to New Zealand, and then they're brought into a factory and then shipped out to site, and then the builder starts chucking it together, and he's all care, no responsibility, but something goes wrong. Oh, well, how many people have touched it along the way, and who's ultimately for it at the end of it all? So, and I don't think there's been, there may be now, they were working on it. I know that, but there was no New Zealand standard for prefabricated buildings.
Yeah.
So if you're not working to a New Zealand standard, then what are you working to? We have New Zealand standards for everything, for concrete, for timber frame buildings. We have them, but not modular construction. So
I think if you look at the sort of private larger developers, none of them have really taken up and continued to use modular
good point,
construction methods. And you would think that, if there were good margins and great efficiencies in it, surely the people that would profit the most from it would be heavily investing in it and really, marketing and selling it. But it just isn't. I mean, I think the best that most of the sort of larger developers do from a module point of view would be, your cassette floorings or your LVL mid floors, where you can save efficiencies with labor on site. I know they do a lot of, I know where they can do a lot of screw piles, which is actually more expensive than like a rib raft concrete foundation, but they do it for the pure efficiencies of the fact, like, to do a concrete rib raft foundation takes a lot longer than just screwing in piles, bolting bearers on and putting down cassette flooring. So from a cost point of view, doing a rib raft foundation is much more cost effective, but from a speed and a delivery of a product to market, screw piles are the most efficient way to, and has the best profit in it, because less time on site, quicker turnaround, better money. So you would think modular homes are supposed to be more cost effective and faster, yet the people who do it for profit haven't seen the merits of it.
Well, I think that's a very good point. If the private sector hasn't already found this is an efficient way to do it, why does the public sector or the government think there's a solution in this? Where does this concept come from?
There is the other issue with, pre-existing relationships with timber companies, with suppliers. With, you've got your Jib Board, your James Hardys, you've got your so there's all those relationships that a lot of the housing groups have with those players in the market also. So for a modular unit to break into the market and bust all those relationships up, and they're not just friendly relationships, they're financial relationships.
Yeah. There's a comment in here I just want to introduce. We're going to run out of time shortly, but there was a comment in this article that says, and because buildings leak during construction without the roof going on fast enough, parts of the prefab timber components needed replacement. I would assume replacement means ship it over from Melbourne and the job's held up. But yeah, what's your comments?
I would imagine they'd have to do it on site because, I mean, if you were going to wait for it to be shipped from Melbourne, I mean, even without the shipping delays, that's a lot of cost for keeping a site waiting on components, which would, I mean, cost a fortune and just the delays. So, yeah, I can't see how they'd be waiting for more parts to come from Melbourne.
Makes you wonder, eh? Because it comes back to that thing you're talking about earlier, Ed. Who signs off on it?
Who do we call?
Yeah, who do we call? Who fixes it? Whatever. When it's produced like that, what's the procedure? And will council accept it? I mean, it's got to just follow issues.
Even from a erection on site point of view, if there's an issue with is there backup?
Yeah.
Someone doesn't work. I need something engineered. I need something. Who do we call? Where's the backup? Because quite often, if you dive into some of these products, there isn't really a lot of backup for them.
Right.
There's agencies here, and the agencies don't have any technical staff, so you've got to go through a few people to try and get to, somebody to actually back you up and give you some answers on why a product's not working or a panel's not working, or how do we,
yeah,
this issue out.
Hey guys.
I mean, I think the prefab idea, it sounds good on paper and it sounds innovative, but the market hasn't been able to find the profit in it, and it doesn't seem like the government will if they're building them for about 8,000 a square metre.
No, I think they found the problem, not the solution.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, look, that was really good. Thanks for your input, guys. I think we'll cut it off there. I'm going to do a bit more research on it, and maybe next week I'll forward you some information. I've actually got some other interesting articles on this topic, but I'll forward that information. I think if we get together next week, and maybe we'll comment on that. We'll just explore this topic a bit further. So yeah, thanks Eddie, good input, and thanks Will, and really appreciate it. For anyone that's watching this and wants to know Eddie or Will's details, you'll find in the links or the cards within the YouTube, you'll be able to click on those and get their details. And I'd encourage everyone that wants to see follow-ups to this just to subscribe. Make sure you ask us questions. We're more than happy to answer questions in subsequent podcasts. So thanks again, guys. And
pleasure.
Yeah. If you want to know more, here are all the buttons and resources that you need. Just use these links to go places. Don't forget to share this video with friends who you think might need this video.